All right, we're live here.
Hi.
I'm Tolgar Alpaga, VP of Marketing at Tatsoft, and joining me today is Mark Tagliolini, our founder and CTO. How are you, Mark?
Oh, I'm great.
So today is our first trial on LinkedIn Live, and we wanted to kind of just give it a go and see how this works in terms of communicating out to you guys. We think there's an opportunity to be direct and give some knowledge share. And one of the key things moving forward is, as we build our community, we want to be able to answer your questions. And we think this platform is a great way to do that in real time. And we're going to be in about, well, I can't just say just yet, but let's just whet the appetite that we're going to be showing 9.1 in a new way that you haven't seen before. And so we're excited to announce that as well. But as we continue on, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone and all your support. Mark, is there anything you want to say just coming out of the FXU event?
Well, just to say that beyond talk about this exciting new 90.1 release, I intend over the next few weeks talk about technology, talk a little bit about the new trends, explore very practical concepts these integrators and end users they need to do to be able to deliver the solutions, and also to share a little bit of our few decades of practical experience in makes things happen, whatever that's product, technology, business process, or internal company workflow. Whatever the community also wants to talk, we will be open to receive questions, recommendations for the next sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to encourage everyone that is tuned in right now, please do add in the comments there any questions you've got, any suggestions, any feedback moving forward. We also plan to use this as, an opportunity for some real live training in terms of showing some internal components of some of the new features that we've got, with Mark kind of guiding that as well. So from there, I just wanted to kind of pivot to, Mark, you recently did a podcast interview on Kudzai Montezera's show, Industry
Yes.
4.0 TV. Yeah. And one of the things that we want to do in marketing is be able to take some of the technical information and convey it in a way that's digestible for everyone to understand, kind of the high level and then really drill down. And in that interview, he had asked you to define the difference between IoT and IIoT.
And yes, exactly. That was a very good question he asked me.
Yeah. And the thing that stuck out to me was just kind of what you spoke about in terms of the role that Edge is playing and it will be playing. So would you care to just elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. Just to be precise, start from the very beginning about the letters. Of course, by now, almost everyone knows the first I mean for industrial. So it's the industrial Internet of Things. But what really means on what are the difference that we decide to create a new I and try to use that kind of differentiation between the traditional IoT. And I believe the easy way to understand where those differences are more relevant is, as you're saying, when you go to the edge. Because in a typical IoT-only system, the edge is that small standard device making the connection between the physical worlds and the clouds. That's the exactly meaning of edge when those IoT concepts were created. The edge are those devices. The typical example are the smart light bulb or anything like that. But what does happen on many, if not most, of the industrial automation applications is what we need to have on the edge. It's not only some measurements, it's not only collect some data. There are those applications as well, don't misunderstand me. But many, if not most of the applications, we have a factory, we have a process, we have lots of equipments, we have local data, we have local applications, in many cases, even local operators. So the concept of the edge on the IoT world is a much more powerful device. It's not only getting some data to send to the clouds, but it's running more applications locally. It must be smart enough to many scenarios, allow a bidirectional data flow between the clouds and the factory. Because you don't want and you can't really move all the data from the factory to the clouds. I think you saw recent a Gartner research about that, Toger. I think you sent me a link
Yeah,
on.
in terms of where data is moving and
Yeah, do you remember how what's the exact percentage they told that will be happening still on the factory? I think it was
yeah, I've got it.
75%. They claim that will be the value that will be uh, reaching. I
Yeah,
think 75%.
they were saying that right now around 10% of enterprise generated data is created and processed outside a traditional centralized data center or cloud. But by 2025, they're saying that it's going to be reaching 75%. Yeah.
And 25 last year was so terrible that spent so quickly. But I think we're only 4 years now to 25.
Yeah.
Just make sure. So essentially, let's assume they are reasonably right. In a few years, 75% of that data will be in process. And Gartner also has lots of IT applications, not necessarily only industrial. Or in the industrial area, that percentage can be even higher. I saw some other studies claiming it will be 90%. But whatever is the number, unlike a traditional 101 IoT, that the ads presented at that standard device just collecting data, on the IoT applications, those edge applications are supposed to be really quite powerful. And also
so,
be able, go ahead.
No, please continue.
No, and also be able to manage that concept of hybrid data. But before I move to the hybrid data, Toger, this help me to remember, that's what we discussed on that meeting about IoT or IoT, or there is some other concept you'd like me to explore before moving to the hybrid data?
Well, I think you were talking about the pre-processing of data, and then from there determining if it's something to shoot to the cloud or not, and I think in terms of that flow, that was just something to elaborate on. I thought that was interesting.
Oh yeah, even I go to that concept of hybrid system. That's another very typical situation that we have on the IIoT. Many processes that we work, they have requirements for high speeds, or they can create huge amounts of data. And let me go more specific to understand the problem. If I have 1,000 trucks send me their position every minute, that's quite reasonable. The truck cannot be hugely far, hopefully in 1 minute. Let's say I have 10,000 trucks. Let's make my fleet bigger. I'm creating 10,000 samples, or 20,000 if I get the 2 geolocations or 3, but I'm creating less than 50,000 samples by minutes to manage a fleet with those 10,000 trucks. If you go to the manufacturing or the process industry, it's very common to have 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 variables creating samples every 1 second. So that's 50 times more data. And also there are many applications, typical example, vibration systems, real-time recognition cameras, that the cycle you want to have the data analyzed does not really allow to send out the cloud and wait back. So another difference with the IIoT systems that we have lots of pre-processing on the edge to filter some data to go out or to do some analysis right away. So you should not think in an IoT system like all the smartness, everything will happen on the clouds, and the edge are there only to do the interface. That will not be typical for most of the applications. Those edge applications are really completely key to the IoT implementation because they need to have speeds, they need to have performance, they need to be flexible to manage local data and send that filter out as you describe it. And in some cases, reply to requests. Many systems now, they're not only collecting data, they're receiving new set points, new requests, or requests to custom data for analytics. And all that is the role the edge on the IIoT must have. That's much bigger than only a more traditional no manufacturing IoT.
Yeah.
That got it?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great way to break it down and kind of, explain just the role that edge is going to play moving forward. Rewinding back in terms of talking about that pre-processed data, how do you determine what stays at the edge and what is for the cloud? I mean, is it purely just in a flow perspective of if you need to disseminate, or would you still determine the cloud to be your area to process?
Well, there is not only, unfortunately, one paragraph magic solution because to each specific process, they may be reasons to keep most of the data on the device or to send that data to the system. But there are some base considerations that we can share. Okay. The first one, I'm sorry if I'm going to say the obvious, is which applications mostly needs that data. There are many factories, many processes that we have the famous traditional time series database or historian databases that can save not only process data like temperature, also OE, KPI information on the manufacturing plants. But there are many factories that they have some in-house applications also co-sharing that data. So the first criteria is to look to our data and see who would be the stewards of that data, who will be really consuming the find access, not only in your specific solution, but trying to think 2 years, 5 years ahead on how that information can leverage the company operations in general. So if you try to think a little outside your specific requirements, that one solution, and you don't try to follow anything trendy just because of some sunshine, oh, we should put everything on the cloud. Oh, no, we should keep everything here. Forget the trends. Just try to visualize the use of that data on the next 5 years. That's the number one criteria. The number two criteria, of course, now you need to bring reality, benchmark performance, the size of the data.
Yeah.
But this analysis of the amount of the data, pricing, if the performance will be there to move or to stay, is your second step, because that's not what should be driving your decisions. Your decisions should be driving by the performance of your company, what's best in your architecture, and then you go shopping on vendors technologies to see if your dream is right there or you need to do a partial implementation of your dream. So those are the two generic steps. And in some research is saying more than half of the cases, the conclusion will be you have to keep data in both places.
Okay.
That's the definition of those hybrid systems that I did mention.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, do you see a lot more companies? You're talking about the two steps, right? And don't get ahead of yourself and always go through the first. In your experience, in the years that you've been doing this, do you see a lot of companies that have kind of skipped to step two first?
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially the beginning on the IoT specification. The concept was, oh, that's very simple. Let's move everything to the clouds and create those huge amounts of data and try to put everything cloud-based. And many of those projects fail because they're trying to really approach from the technology point of view by itself. Oh, let's do this system diagram that looks nice, but not reanalyzing the requirements of the industrial process.
Yeah.
So you approach a problem like a graduation thesis. Oh, I want to show I can put everything run in this cloud application. But you really need to approach from the industrial point of view. I saw one of the broadcasts from my good friend Walker that he was explaining that is in this new IoT phase should not be driven for the IT only people.
Yeah.
Should be the factory for people, the industrial automation VPs, the process managers that really understand the process in place to drive the solution. Of course, you bring in IT and all the technology behind, but the workflow and the process decision should not start neither from IT or marketing, or in some cases, even the CEO, should start from the people with the knowledge, the process that understands when you can get the real value changing to that IIoT architecture.
You touch on a good point. It's a buzz, but the IT OT convergence, right? And this need between the two silos, as it were, because there's almost a bit of a misunderstanding of each other's roles and the impact and what's needed. And to your point, perhaps with the operations side first, because it's really process oriented and kind of, in that risk. Yeah, no, I hear you on that. So how do you think that's something that organizations can overcome?
Well, the reason of that OT IT, if you go to the platforms that we have in place 20 years ago, and frankly speaking, many large vendors are still pretty much relying on the same architecture. Very simple things to the IT guy, like consuming web services, playing with SQL and NoSQL databases, having some real-time integration with their ERP, MES, or some other third-party application, things that manage all the license and distribution of the applications for a centralized application management system. All those things that were daily life on the IT people, when they talk with the OT, what they talk about? Because the tools they had in place didn't allow, and many of them don't allow that. Yeah. So the way to manage that is really very simple. It's the OT, the operations people. They need really to start doing major upgrades in their software solutions, in their platforms, because not only us, of course, it's a little bit of our own solution, the Tatsoft frameworks, but not only us. There are many products nowadays that manage all the operations requirements very nicely, but they do have built in very easily all those IT checkboxes that you need.
Yeah.
So if you, as an operations manager, director, VP, whatever, you work with those platforms that are more modern, when you want to build your IoT solution, or keep doing your steps to optimize your platform, you can, with no problems, bring the IoT people inside because all those requirements of connectivity and also security, they will tell you that you need to put your network between level 2, 3, 3.5, and 4 to isolate the business network from the process network. And all those IoT requirements, if you have the right platform, you just will say confidence, oh, yes, yes. Then go to your vendor and double check, of course. But if you have the right platform, all those IoT requirements so they can embrace your solutions, they will be natively there.
Yeah.
But you need to make the effort to modernize. That's the requirement you have to do.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for telling me about that. I'm just we have a question here, so I'm gonna pitch it to you. And I apologize if I mispronounce this, but Hezrone Mujawo is asking, what do you recommend to be the best way to keep this data? He's talking about when we're talking about cloud or edge.
If there is no specific reason to move the data for the cloud, don't. Because what does happen, keeping that concept to have edge devices and edge applications that are a little more smart, in many processes in my daily life, what I see, you don't need really to move all that data to the clouds, but you need to have on the edge something that can on demand supply the requests for your corporation or for your analytics application. Let's go back to that discussion where to keep the data. It doesn't matter if you have applications that are smart enough to send or request data on demand. Because on most of the process applications, they have already some storage in place. They have some factory for storage. They have some systems. And in many projects, only a small subset of that's requirements on the up system or the centralized location wants to be able to drill down as needed. When they have a problem, when they need to do some specific analysis, or when you need to do some audit trail. So the easy way always to do something is not to do it. I'm a good, typical old style, lazy engineer. Like programmer, the best code with no bugs is the one that has no lines or as less lines of code as possible. So you should minimize moving data just by moving and having solutions that can dynamically accept the request and provide as much as possible dynamically the need of change. And only really move the data when there are clear economical or third-party requests to do that. That's the criteria to make that decision. If possible, don't move.
All right, so there you go. Yeah. Hopefully that answered your question for you. And if you need any follow-up, just let us know in the chat and we'll definitely deliver. Mark, one thing that I want to just touch on, I was just reading a recent article, but when you're talking edge and cloud, one of the needs to differentiate was around latency.
Mm-hmm.
And so how significant are we talking in terms of the differences and how do you determine, as the latency needs, what you're gonna take as your avenue forward?
Well, everything that I'm going to talk about is the wide adoption of 5G. Okay. So they don't show that video in a couple of years from now. So just a little comment. If probably people here are following, are looking everything they're planning on 5G. The technology is there, but the applications, the devices, there is lots of small parts missing here and there. Okay. And I'm not trying to guess when all those things will be in place. And when those things are in place, you are going to have a huge jump that likely invalidates what I'm talking now. But talking pre-5G with the devices and network infrastructure we have in place, okay, you must acknowledge that everything that works on minutes, it's enough and typical for a cloud system. Everything that works under 1 second, it would be quite challenging to try to close that loop through the cloud systems. Because when you are running that operation, the average value is not really what you want. If you have a centralized remote server database that means, oh, our average access to that ping is 200 milliseconds. Okay, what that average means? It means that sometimes can be 50 great and sometimes can be 2 seconds.
Big variance, yeah.
So in the variance, that's the key words, not only the average latency you need to analyze. And when you go that, you start to find out that the effort to guarantee a low variance and high speeds using a complete third-party remote infrastructure is quite challenging. So if you do that, you should have a very really cost and business case explanation why you cannot keep some little IPC, some little industrial computer, some Raspberry Pi, industrial Raspberry Pi, and of course the RP, but some sort of small unique box. You need to really think about why you don't have that small device on the edge that can do some processing or can even do things like store and forward. You can put that device collecting data reliably every 50 milliseconds and send the data to the cloud, acting as a store and forward device instead of relying completely on the external requirements. So the lattice depends on the process, but you should be very conservative. You should pick up your requirements and multiply by 2, multiply by 4, because if it's too close, you should try to think that hybrid solution, that you do have something with a little more power on the field to manage that. And by the way, that's not based on try to sell one architecture to another one. It's really based on real experience. When you're moving data on high speed and lots of data, you find all kind of things. We found one router that if the IP packet size, I'm not talking about the TCP/IP, I'm talking about the level 3 on the OSI soft network layer. I'm talking real down. If the router had a configuration to break the blocks in 1,000 bytes instead of 1,500 bytes, there was a completely unrelated error on the connection on the other side. So we do find times to times very hard problems when you try to do the operations of your infrastructure on the limits. By the way, if you know the details of Ethernet and TCP technology, you know you should not work on the limits.
Yeah.
A little technical session, we are going very deep on electronics. The Internet works.
All right, I think we may have lost Mark's signal here, but
yeah, when put out those messages. So so you should not never create a system working too close from the limits.
Mark, you cut out there for a moment. Your screen.
Yeah, I saw. I lost 2 or 3 seconds.
But that's good that we got you back. So that's perfect. Yeah, you know, what you and I kind of put this thing together impromptu because we wanted to test this platform out, and we had 2 topics in mind, and I think we've talked about 5 or 6. And for me, it's been, you know, an eye opener, and I'm sure just for anyone who's going through the considerations of what we talk about in terms of digital transformation, when we talk about IoT convergence, when we talk about edge versus cloud, all these are some real-time things that I think we can delve into. Is there anything else that you want to cover here?
I think that's all right. Too many.
All right, it looks like Mark maybe.
I think it was a good set, and in fact, the LinkedIn Internet's giving a hint that was enough.
it's the music at the Oscar.
Yeah.
Get off the stage. Yeah, perfect. They're just cutting your.
Yeah. So we can conclude for today, and we hope next week you are going to set up the dates and keep starting that. Okay.
Yeah, no, and for everyone that tuned in, thank you. And if you found this of value and, would like us to continue, let us know. We're going to just try to set up a consistent schedule. We'll set up a day and time, and then, we're open to entertain any topics, any questions you've got. Mark is, volunteered his time to help out, as will I. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.